Hey, what's up, comrades? So next up on my list of things to do is Seventh Saga. So Seventh Saga is a game, a Super Nintendo game that came out in the 90s at some point, that I got and I really enjoyed. I was never able to beat it when I was younger. I just became too frustrated with some of the mechanics in it, which some mechanics are total bullshit. But my brother was able to get through it. I think he either got to the last boss or he was able to finally get his way through it and beat it. I came back to it later and I played through the whole thing. And then it's always had kind of a soft spot in my heart because it's so unique in its presentation. You're going to see, obviously, if you're not watching this, you can watch it and see some of the graphics. It's definitely a Super Nintendo game, but just the way it kind of handles, anywhere you're in, when you start battle, it swings you around and you have battle in that area. Now most of the areas are the same, so that's not asking too much from the game. But the monsters are all very unique and interesting and odd sometimes. There's literally a griffin in this game, but the griffin is like a lamia, like a woman with two snake's tails. There's a lot of issues with the English translation of the game, and not just the written language. Just some of the concepts of the mechanics of the game got fucked up. And I'm actually playing a version where someone went back in and fixed some of that by adjusting weapon values and somewhat of the leveling up. But it was still kind of a struggle. So we might as well get to that. So when this came out in Japan, it was fine, right? I guess people played it, enjoyed it, and they decided to bring it to the US. But when they brought it to the US, they felt like it was too easy. And so they lowered the stats of all the main characters. And there's 7 characters that you can choose from to play, and then as one of those 7 characters, you can, at some point in the game, pick up another person to help you. And you can switch them out sometimes, and then kind of the other individuals out of the 7 become your rival. And we'll get to that more at the story. But if they're your rival, you can fight them. But they didn't lower the stats of the enemies. So, because they were trying to balance it to make it a little more difficult, but it's at a point where it's almost too difficult to beat. You really have to over level yourself to beat some of these things, or you have to save scum, which is what I do. Because even when you boost yourself up completely and you're doing attacks and stuff, every one of these guys has a healing ability, and they will heal for more damage than you can do. And it's not a little bit more damage where you can keep kind of chipping away at it. It is almost double the damage you can do at times. And so it's what the fuck? So you have to essentially, for at least I was using one of the characters who's a mage, and so I would pink at them with 1 hit point a turn, 1 hit point a turn, 1 hit point a turn, until they healed, and then I would load state, and then use my strongest attack at that point, praying that I got some sort of critical attack that killed them. And I was able to muddle my way through, but it was these battles would really draw out, and there's no reason for it. There's also a trick you can do where your partner's not allowed to come in. So there'll be you and then your partner. And your partner's not allowed to do these solo fights with these other individuals because it's unfair or something. The game never explains it. The game doesn't explain a lot. So what do you got to do, right? Well, there's a trick that if your partner's dead when you enter this fight with them, then you can just revive them. And they revive, and then you can double team these motherfuckers, and that's how you got to beat them. Straight up. Even in this revised edition, which is you're a little more powered up, and I felt it when I was playing. I was okay, cool, these monsters are a little harder. And you get to these, I got to my first fight with the guy, and I was this is still fucking insane. They had these guys, these solo battles, they would literally one-shot me if I didn't boost myself with all the defense boost and the agility boost and all this stuff. I'd get one-shotted by their attack. And it's the fuck, man? And I was not under level. I was massacring other people, including the bosses in some of these areas. Just a pure massacre. But I get into this battle and be dead. And it's like you lost. And it's like, god damn fucking game. So that's interesting. So if you're going to play this, I would definitely play like... I don't know if there's a Japanese dubbed version. Or it's a Japanese version that's dubbed. I didn't see it, so I don't know if that exists. But like I said, there's... if you go to like ROM hacks, you can find like a reworked, I think is what it's called. Like version 3 is what I'm playing, I'm pretty sure, off the top of my head. So you can play that. And that did make it a little smoother going through. And then obviously playing it on emulator is the preferred way, because there is a bit of grinding, and you can just kind of like, you know, zone out for a little bit and just power through enemies to grind yourself up a bit, get some money if you need it. All right. So it's a Japanese role-playing game. So you're on an adventure, you buy stuff from stores, you buy items that are... The items are essential in this game. I cannot express how essential it is to be stocked up on like potions and magic herbs, or M-herbs as they're translated, and there's magic water which heals people. There's mirrors. It's essential to have mirrors because mirrors reflect petrify when people cast it on you, and there is a lot of enemies who can petrify you, like a lot. And it doesn't always petrify them, but at least you don't get petrified, which will fuck you over. You want antidotes. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. And you can, if you have a spellcaster that can heal some of this stuff, like there's Valsu and Asuna. And I played Asuna in this playthrough. As you'll see, she's the elf babe. They get a lot of these healing spells, but they run out of magic, and their damage output is shit. So you really got to be using them for attack magic and stuff. So you want these like bottle of agility and bottle of power and bottle of defense, and then later on you get the runes. The runes are like the big kind of like kicker crystal like thing in this game that are like game changing when you start getting them later in the game. And they're kind of the big thing. That's like the point of the plot. But yeah, then you travel the open world, and the fun thing is that you have this little orb in the top left corner, and as you move around, you can see enemies moving around too. It also shows you where like towns are, and because the screen is pretty close to where you're at, like you don't have that many like squares away from your character, so sometimes it's hard to like orient yourself around. And so it's really nice when you're like walking and you see like the big circle, which is a town or a castle or a cave, and you're like, oh, I gotta go there. And that can kind of help you navigate a little bit better. You get a map after like the first boss area, essentially, and that can be a little helpful. The map's really confusing at first. If you're playing this, the dark areas are areas you can go, and the light areas are not. They're like mountains and stuff. And then there's like river, like the ocean and water too. And the map doesn't show anything. It just shows like the general landscape from like, and you don't get a lot of detail. But it's helpful when you're like, people keep talking about this fucking place. I can't find it. I'm going to open up this map and just see like where I'm at. It's like, have I been up in this little area? Let's kind of work my way over there. It's a little hard to navigate, but I like it. You know, it's like you got a map. It's like real life. You got a map. You're like, I don't know the fuck. People keep saying it's in northeast. So you go northeast and you just hit nothing, and you just got to kind of circle around a little bit to figure where stuff is. And the battles aren't so annoying, especially when you're on an emulator, when you've speeded up for all the battles for the most part. It's like, yeah, it's fine. And yeah, and then there's boss battles. They're a little tougher, but as long as you got a good thing going and you got your partner, like boss battles are never that hard. Even the first boss, you just do it by yourself, you're solo, before you can get anybody. Because you can't pick anyone up till you get to the third town, which is through a cave. So you spend a bit of time by yourself, just kind of like learning how the game goes. You get through the first boss, all that stuff, and then you can get to the cave, and then you fight like your second boss, and then you can start recruiting people. And some people just can't recruit. Like, and I don't know if it's completely random or if it's character dependent, but some people just like, hey, I fucking hate you, and you're like, well, fuck you too. And one guy, this Wilhelm alien guy, or Wilmy, I fought him like 4 times. Like, so it's not like you're killing these dudes necessarily, which I thought was unfortunate. And sometimes you don't always have to fight these guys. Like, you'll just run into them in town, and they'll be like, oh, I fucking hate you, or one time, later on you have runes. They're like, oh, you got the runes. I want the runes. And then they'll start a fight. Or sometimes they'll just be like, I want to test my strength. Are you down? And you'll be like, yes or no. Same thing with joining. And you don't really know until you talk to them. So it's always good to save as much as possible and save state if you're playing an emulator as much as possible. Like before I talk to any of these motherfuckers, I always save state. And I would say at the beginning, you have a lot more. You seem to have more options. But even like later on in the game, I was still running into some people who were like, "Oh, hey, you're so much stronger now, and you got runes. We should definitely join up and do stuff." Or like, "Oh, I got a rune too. We should join up, and then we can combine our runes and do great." And you can choose that. But like I said, let me go over the characters. And there's like an intro sequence at the beginning where like the king of Lemley goes around and just like collects all these people. So you see them in like their hometowns and stuff. And their hometowns are like places you can go. Like there's like a dwarf town where like the dwarf character comes from. And then like the elf girl comes from some bar in some kingdom in like the north part of the continent. And there's like one continent and then like a smaller continent and then like a tiny island, according to the map. So we see where everyone comes from. And in this world, there's humans, elves, dwarfs, demons. There's an alien. This is literally what it's called. And then the Tetugian, which are robots, are like androids or something, like humanoid. They're not humanoid looking. They look like fucking robots, but they can like gain levels and do magic. So, I mean, the magic's like laser and lightning. So that's not really magic. So yeah, well, they're robots. And so you can choose. Let's see if I remember the names. There's Camille. He's just a standard like human fighter. Uses swords. Uses shields. I mean, there's weapons that you can use and there's weapons you can't use. So like Camille and Oliver's the dwarf, can use essentially all weapons and all armor. And then you have Asuna, Valis, and I think it's like Lejuice, the demon. And Valis is like a mage, and Asuna is like an elf, right? Because elf's just no magic. They can use like certain weapons like staffs and daggers and a rapier. There's one sword that Valis can use that like is an actual sword, and then they can use like robes and stuff, so they just have less. And then Wilmy and Lux, who is the robot, don't equip anything, so they're the cheapest to play. So if you just wanted to like gather your wealth, which you get so much money in this game, like I don't understand how you'd even possibly use it all. Like, and the game is very courteous in that when you die, you lose like half your money or something, but you don't lose your gems, and the gems can be bought and sold for the same value. So for example, an opal, it costs 100 gold or whatever, and you can sell it for 100 gold anywhere. About halfway through the game, I would say, like after I got like my third or fourth, right around getting my fourth rune, I had so much money. And granted, I have Lux as my partner, the robot, so he needs no equipment. And then I had Asuna, who doesn't really get that much choices for equipment. But I'd like max, you can only hold 9 of any item. So I'd maxed out every gem. Diamond, sapphire, emerald, topaz, opal, ruby, maxed out all of them. And I still had like tens of thousands of gold, which in this game I have yet, like I'm getting near the end, and I have yet to find anything that costs more than 20,000. And the diamonds are worth 10,000. So I had like hundreds of thousands of potential money just like lying around and nothing to spend it on. So I mean, I was very conscientious about buying gems at the beginning, but as time went on, it's just like I don't give a fuck. Like especially because I maxed them out. Like there's nothing left to buy, and like enemies drop them all the time. Like enemies drop opal. Like every fucking enemy drops an opal. So there's like really no reason to buy those. You'll just gather them up, and then you just have like a spare 900 gold at all times if you really need it. But it's very generous, very kind. A lot of the weapon shops don't change. Like I was like buying stuff. Like I bought a suit of armor for Asuna, like after I got like my second or third rune, and by the time I got my 6th rune, which is 7 runes, they were not selling anything better than that, right? For example, and even the shops, it wasn't just like her. It's like there were shops at like this second third of the game that were selling the exact same things, like cut and paste from like the first third of the game. So I guess the idea is that now you'll have money for it. But again, you got to like grind a little bit. You got to level up a little bit, and you're just going to get money, and then like everything drops gems, and you can find gems, and then there is like, so you just have tons of money. The biggest bullshit thing about this game, though, is that you can find items it's like Dragon Quest, like the original Dragon Quest, where you don't just like click a button, like an A button, to like look at something, to talk to people or search. You click the A button to bring up the menu, and from the menu you can talk, look at your status, search, all this stuff. And it's like, it's not as bad as it sounds. It's just, it is what it is, right? You get used to it pretty quick. So you don't just walk up to somebody and click A or X or whatever and you're talking to them. You have to click open the menu, then talk to them. But you just click it. Talks at the top, searches at the bottom, so it's easy to like navigate that. You will just if you just search randomly, you will just find random shit, and it's not random, but there's no indication anything's there, and it's not like, oh, it's a role-playing game, like a Japanese role-playing game. If I search people's drawers, if I search like, there's treasure chests, right? That's fine. But there's literally areas where like you're just standing around next to like a tree, and not like a special tree, like the exact same cut and paste tree everything else has. And if you search there, you will find something. And there's no indication. And in most towns, there's like 5 or 6 things you can find. Like, I didn't realize this. I never knew this before. That's the craziest part. Like, I played this is the 3rd time me like playing through this game. And I literally, in my head, it's like, there's got to be like something, right? Because when you search like a chest of drawers or something, it'll be like, this chest of drawers, this is a fireplace, yada, yada. One time I'm just in an empty bar, and I'm just like, I just searched like a pile of wood. That's the same cut and paste pile of wood in every bar. And it's like, you found a ruby. And I was like, the fuck? So then I searched more and more, and I found nothing. And at some point, I was trying to figure out where to get one of these, like where this town was at. Because it's like, I feel like I walk around this whole map, and I'm tired of it. So I opened up a guide, and I was like, where's this? I like look for the town, and it's like, when you get to this town, search here, and it had pictures, and it was literally just fucking picture. And so then I was like, it's like they just like randomly chose random spots on the map to put items. And there's a whole section where it's like, you have an accessory slot, and it's like, I'm like 2/3 of the way through the game, and I found one shop that sells one item that goes in this accessory slot. I'm like, what's the point of this? And then there's like 4 items you can find by searching, and just like completely like, it's like search behind a column in this castle. Nope, not a special column. There's like 10 other columns just like standing around next to it. It's like, no one says anything about it. Like, how the fuck am I just supposed to search every square in this game? Yes, you are supposed to search every second square in this game. So you can get this robe that nullifies fire damage. It makes the game like 1,000 times easier, because all the bosses use fire damage. Not all of them, because there's an ice one too. And then there's a ring it's like, holy shit, man. So I'm like, I'm using a fucking guide for this. And I went and got all those accessories. There's only 4 of them. But it was like game changing immediately. And I was like, God, fuck this game. Well, and the robes are robes, like they're like armor, but I'm a mage. Like the fire robe is like 2 less armor than like, and 2 less, like it's like 30 it's 30 instead of like 33 armor. But I'm immune to fire. Like the fuck, why wouldn't I use this? Oh man. It's like, Jesus Christ. So that's 7 Saga. There's also a mechanic, and the game tells you this if you just talk to the right NPC. If you defend one round and then attack or use a spell the next round, it's stronger. I don't think it's a critical hit stronger, and I usually don't do it because it's usually not that much better than just like hitting them every turn. Like, it's not double the damage, but you get to defend one round. So when you're like save stating against some of these guys, because it's like impossible to beat them otherwise, sometimes it's just better just defend so you don't die with a 1-hit kill. And then when you attack the next turn. And then speed is the most important stat, in my opinion, because speed lets you dodge attacks. And part of the reason I chose Asuna this time, because I beat it with Lux. Or no, I beat it with Wilm one time. And the first time I played it with Camille, I think. And there's no point to playing with different characters. Like, there's a couple times in the game, like if you have Asuna, there's like a different path to the North Continent. And if you play with Oliver, there's a 3rd path to the North Continent from the South Continent where you start off. But that's it. Everyone else goes the same path. So there's like one little split in how you end up in the North Continent. And then there's a dwarf town where if you're the dwarf, you get access to like a secret area that lets you get more treasure. And I'm sure there's some other secrets like that. So bravo to this game, this Super Nintendo game that's very obscure, having all these like cute little things that like choosing your class at the beginning of the game like really matters. Like, it like super matters to your style of play. And then choosing your friend who comes along with you is also super important. Like, I'm Asuna, the mage, and I choose Valis or the mage. I might be totally fucked because now I got 2 mages. The mage magic is strong, but I need like a warrior who doesn't die in 1 hit, like who can like take it, So it really helps balance that out. But yeah, I think that's all the mechanics I can think of right now. Stuff comes up while we're talking about the plot. We'll hit that. All right, so now that we've kind of covered the basics of the game, one last thing to note is that it's technically the first of a series of 4 games. They're loosely connected. So the King Lemmy, or Remer, as it is in Japanese, and in the following games, is how he's pronounced, is kind of like the thorough line between all the games and his kind of like story. But there's not like, oh, this is a direct... I mean, it's like a direct sequel, but it's not like this is a sequel. It's like you could play this game, have no idea this other game even occurred, and like continue on with your merry day. I'd almost say it's more similar to the Quintet series of games, like Terra Enigma, Illusion of Gaia, and stuff. There's more that's more tangential connection, as in like these games have similar themes and concepts and are kind of almost like different takes on the same idea of like divinity and world development and progression, evolution, and stuff like that. While the Seventh Saga / Elnard, which is the Japanese name, / Mystic Arc, which is 2 of the games, or have that name, / Brainlord, which is technically the second game in the series. It's more of like you have this character, like these are stories about this king and like the things that occurred around him in this world. And I'm gonna play at least the first 3. I can't find the 4th one. I like saw a picture of the cover, so I know it exists somewhere, but I haven't been able to find it on like any even like Japanese ROM sites. So it's like a PlayStation 2 game too, which the rest of these are all Super Nintendo games. So I don't know how like related it is, but if I can find it, I'll play it. Otherwise, we'll do this one and then the next 2. But that's just kind of like the overall picture of like where the game sits. And so let's get into it. So, like I said, you have King. I'm just gonna go with Remer at this point because that's his name in the next 2 games. It's just like it's the whole LR translation business, Lemmer, or Remer, and how they pronounce the R's in certain portions of Japan and how it gets translated over. So King Remer, in the opening cutscene, goes and gets the 4 heroes, right? Kaleem, if I get these names wrong, I apologize. Who's the knight? Oliver, the dwarf. Legis, the demon wizard. Valis, the human wizard. Asuna, the elf wizard. Lux, the Tetujian / robot. And then Wilmy, the alien. He's an alien. That's what I haven't seen him referred to as anything else besides like alien or mutant. And then he trains them for 5 years. And then the quest is you need to go find the 7 runes, combine them together to save the world. And that's pretty much all the information you're given. So you start off in the first town. I don't exactly remember what it was called. The whole like continent. So there's the Western continent, the Eastern continent, and then there's Millennium, which is a sunken continent. So Tichondria is like the Western continent. I can't remember what the Eastern continent's called. And then, like I said, Millennium or Millimem or something like that. So the game begins when you choose a hero. And for this round, like I said, I chose Asuna. It has tiny bit of effect on how people respond to you. Like if you choose Wilmy, which is one of the playthroughs I did in the past, people treat you like more coldly, and you have a harder time finding like an ally. Well, if you choose like Valis, then it's easier for you to connect with everybody essentially, or Kaleem, the knight. And then there's just different, I feel like I haven't played this enough times to be like there is a built-in rival that is always the same, but like I chose Asuna, and like the kind of like this right from the beginning, Wilmy wanted to fight me and Legis was talking shit, and everyone else will like join up with me at different times. At some point you have to fight one of these guys. Well, there's 2 times you have to fight. So the first time you have to fight them is when you bump into one of them after they've taken over like a castle and stolen one of the runes from like the previous king. And for that, I had Valis as my enemy. But up to that point, every time I talked to him, he was like, you want to join? You want to play? And even there, when I met him there, he's like, we can still join forces and be together. And I was like, no, I got fucking Lux, bruv. So I didn't do that. And then later on, when you find the area where the Sky Rune used to be, it was stolen, quote unquote. Which is interesting because it's guarded by a dragon, and the fucking dragon's still there. And then you have to like fly around, and I'm trying to remember, I think it might have been Wilmy who stole it. Every time I ran into that guy, he wanted to fight. It's like, I killed him like 4 times in this fucking game, but he just kept like being okay, so whatever. At some point, you can go and challenge everybody individually if you really want, and kill every single one who doesn't actually join you, and just like get them off the map. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. There's a certain point in the game which we'll get to where like none of that matters. So, but from what I recall, there's only 2 mandatory fights. I ended up fighting several. Like I fought Oliver, killed him. Fought Legis. The only person I didn't kill was Kaleem, who even like the last time I bumped into the guy was like very cordial. While the rest of them, once I started getting all the runes, they were like, "I want the runes, fuck you!" And then it was battle time, battle on. All right, so then you begin your adventure, and people in town are the storytelling in this is very good. The limited amount there is. So it's important most of the time to talk to most, if not all, the people in each town, because they will give you pieces of advice of where you need to go, kind of hints of what you need to do, stuff like that. Okay. So talking to people in the beginning of town, they just kind of talk about how it was great having you around for 5 years, and how there's a town to the south that is having problems. So I grounded out to level 5, as I usually do in these, especially older role-playing games, and even newer games. If there's an opportunity to just like, hey, there's a town over there, you should go over there. I'll usually grind to like level 5 to 10, depending on the game, or depending how easy it is to get there, just to like give myself like a good head start, so I don't have to do too much grinding later on. And I'll usually end up grinding like a little bit mid-game and a little bit at the end of the game, just to give myself a more smooth course on these JRPGs. But so I grind up to level 5 pretty easy. There's just like hermits and what they call chimeras, which are just eagles. In the area, and they go down pretty quick. And if there's any issues, I just like wander back into town. And if you die, you just lose some gold and end up back in town. So like no headache, really. And again, you can just buy opals at this point for like 100 gold, and that keeps your gold. Just being fine. Bought some potions, didn't really need to use them. Asuna has like, it starts off with an ice spell, gets a healing spell pretty quick, and she's good to go. So once at level 5, I cruise down to the next town, and they have a problem. There's a story about like a wicked spirit in the castle to the east, and there was a hunter with his dog that went to like take care of it, and they never came back. And now every day or every night, people in town are going crazy because they hear the howling of like this dog in this castle, and it's like really pissing people off. So it needs to get taken care of. And then there's a guy in town. Oh, and then also one of your friends, one of the other heroes, locked the door to like the next part of the continent. And so we got to get the key to open it. And this is the first time. The key thing's important because this is the first time we get like, hey, some of these people you trained with for the last 5 years are the asshole, right? And we never get like names because the game, I don't know when it determines, but it doesn't determine it like when you first start the game. I feel like it kind of randomly determines, and it could possibly change throughout the game depending on stuff that happens, like who you recruit or whatnot. So but somebody went through like this passageway that led to like this other part of the continent, and then they sealed the door, and then the key to like unseal the door through this cave is in the castle, and that's like the whole reason that the hunter took the dog over there to like fight the spirit, because the key was over there for whatever reason to like open the door. I'm assuming it was like a spare key. So that all trade and whatnot got locked out. And there's a guy who's like, I really want to get home. If you can get me over there, I will give you a map. And the map is an interesting feature, as I mentioned before. It is somewhat useful, but not super useful. So not really a complaint per se. It shows you where you're at, and it gives you like a vague detail of like what's around you. So it can be helpful to be like finding towns, and someone's just like, it's in the northeast. And you open this map up, and you're like, that is the areas of the northeast I can go to. I need to go like meander around up there, for example. So we go over to the castle, and there's a component I didn't need this time because I was so over leveled. I think I got up to like level 10, in fact, before I got to the boss. So you go to the castle, you fight some new monsters. You get in there and you find the dog spirit, and they got killed, and the spirit combined with the anger of the dog, and so you have to kill the anger of the dog to like cure the curse on the castle. And once you kill it, all the monsters disappear. So when you're heading through this castle, you can like try to find all the treasures and stuff and meander about, which I do because like whatever. But if you're like, I don't want to fight all this shit and then go treasure searching while I'm trying to kill all this stuff because you're concerned about whatever, then you could just not. You can literally just like make a beeline for the bosses in most, if not all, the castles, kill them, and then the castle's like cleansed of its curse. And all the monsters are like thematically appropriate. It's a lot of ghosts and like haunting things, while outside it's more like creatures. So I appreciate that. when you're in these castles or dungeons or whatever, instead of having like the overworld be the background and stuff, it's always like just black. It's like blackness. So that's interesting too, because you essentially have two different battle backs. Because again, the outside world is not like grass and forests and trees and mountains. It's all kind of like dirt plains. And I think it's just that way because for simplicity's sake, because it's like an old Super Nintendo game, and it's just like that's how it's going to be. So we do that. We get the key. We head back, and then everyone's super excited. Oh, I can finally sleep again. Oh, that poor dog. Oh, you got the key. Excellent. Go open the gate. So their dialogue changes, which is nice for an older game. And so then we head through the gate. Oh, and someone's like, "Oh, hey, just a heads up. There was a mercenary looking for you. He wants to kill you, I think." And so you head through this cave, like the Earth Cave or whatever it's called, and you bump into Sir Pisson for the first time. And yes, for the first time, indeed. He is kind of like my least disliked reoccurring bad guy, because he shows up a few times, and every time he just shows up. Like he'll be in a dungeon and he'll talk some mad shit, and then you rock his ass so hard that he disappears and doesn't come back until much later. And that's it. You don't hear anything about it. You don't have to. He's not scheming behind the scenes. He's just a big asshole who gets in the way, and it's a cost saving measure, right? You just have the same model. You change some of the colors and you put him back in. Have him have some dialogue explaining why he's back. I kind of love him. He's got a whip. He's moderately difficult, but not if you're leveled up enough and you got your shit together. Really not that hard to get through. You kill him, you get through the gate, and you head to the next town. Once you're there, you got to play like a chase the man to find the dude with the map. You go to like every part of town essentially. And everyone's like, "Oh, he was just here. He was looking for you. Oh, he was just here. Maybe he's here. Maybe he's here. Maybe he's here." And then you start in his house and you end back up in his house, and he's like, "Oh, he found you. Excellent. Here's the map." So that was nice. This is also the first town where you can recruit somebody. I don't think I recruited anyone here because I wanted Lux, just because Wilmy wanted to fight. I wanted just like a hard hitter. And so I wanted Lux because he's the hardest of all the hitters and has the most defense. So it's just a good match to kind of cruise through this game and have a good time. So now that we're in our new town, Borno, if I remember correctly, we can start getting companions, like I mentioned before. So there's Borno, and then the next town over is Zealous, I think, something like that. And between the two of them, we can kind of bounce back and forth to find our companions, whatever we want. I chose Lux. Being Asuna and just being like heavily magic focused, in my head it was like, well, the best choice is going to be Lux or William, or Wilmy, and Wilmy just wanted to fight me every single time, so Lux it is. Plus, I just like Lux. He's like a big robot. He's got tons of life and tons of health, and he just kind of hits things real hard. So, super cool. We also find a sick child in one of the homes, and there was a quest I forgot to mention where someone needs to deliver medicine, but they can't get through the Earth Gate. So now that we've opened the Earth Gate, if we go like back and forth real quick from the previous town, shoot, what was it called? Whatever. The town before the dog castle, and then Bruno, we can like, oh look, we got we can get the medicine, bring it to the kid, and like, oh good, we healed him. Yay, thanks everybody. There's also a new enemy around here that's kind of an asshole. Most times, like as you're progressing through this, there's like new enemies that just like pop up. Every now and then you get like a real asshole enemy that just like kind of, it comes out of nowhere and just is like extra annoying. And one of the funny things about this game is like you get to these new areas with new monsters, and oftentimes it's much more efficient to just go back to a previous area and grind it out, because the new monsters give virtually no better experience or gold. Like occasionally there'll be like a leap, but then there'll be like a leap and it's like, oh, this area is clearly better. And then you'll like continue on in that area and you'll fight these enemies that are just like super annoying. Like they just take forever, or they have like some really awful asshole attack, or their speeds are real high. And then you kill them. And like, let's say, I can't remember what the exact numbers are, but the hermits were giving you like 50 gold a kill, right? And they died like instantly in one hit, and you could just like, and then you get here and there's these androids who have like 10 times as much like ability to fuck you over, and they give like 200, and it's like 200 is 4 times 50, but I can kill like 6 hermits in the time it takes me to like carefully strategize my battle with these androids. And sometimes there's 2 of them that show up and you're just like, fuck this. And it gets worse as the game goes on, because the escalation of experience points doesn't really go up that much. Like there's a point later on where there's an area you can kill a guy and it's like a little brain guy, and the brain guy gives you like 2,000 experience points. Well, and everything else in that area gives you like four to 600 experience points, right? So, but the brain guy pops up pretty often in like one certain area, and then you like progress like a decent amount to like almost like the end of like that part of the game in like a different continent, and dudes are still just giving you like 1,000 experience points, but they're like 5 times harder to kill and take like a lot more like, oh, I gotta heal and then I gotta like cast a spell. I can't just like spam attack to kill him. Well, the brain guy can just spam attack with Lux and Asuna, who's not even a fighter, and just massacre him. And they show up like pretty regularly, and even the ones that are 500. And so it's like, why would I grind out this other area when these guys are like take so much more effort to kill, right? So it's just interesting. But that's how I felt about these androids. It's like the first time you're like, this is like a drastic increase in difficulty for like virtually no extra rewards. So if you're having trouble, in this game ever, I would recommend just like returning to a previous area where you can like curb stomp the enemies, because you'll curb stomp them even if the experience is like quote unquote significantly less, you curb stomp them to such a degree that it's like so quickly that it's just like your experience per minute is so much higher. All right. So in Zealous, we learn about the ruins of Melanam. And we also learn about Brontu, the historian. Brontu is, he's all about trying to figure out what happened to Millennium, and Millennium's full of like treasure seekers, because there's a lot of rumors that there's lots of treasure over there, over them Dar Hills. But you got to head through a cave, which is west of Zealous. So this is where I pick up Lux, my hero, my best friend forever, because he's a good match for Asuna. He's a hard hitter, got lots of defense, and he's a robot. I love robots. Robots are fucking sweet. I would get a monster, as in with the Saga games, because monsters are also super cool, but robots are also, I love robots. In these kind of fantasy games. Like the robot character in Saga 2, fantastic. And also in Saga Frontier 1. I just very much enjoy having these like strange robot creatures and these things. So once we head into the cave, we find our homie Brontu there and rescue him, and then he joins the party. It doesn't mean he fights or does anything. But then we wander around. There's lots of treasure. There's mimics. We get the mimics. I got killed by a mimic the first time, and then when you go back, there's nothing there. And then I mentioned my best friend forever, Pison. He's back. That was fast. Like, love it. So we get inside. We fight Pison again. This time he talks about how, haha, you thought I was dead, and I was dead, but I came back to life because of my anger. My anger was so strong, it brought me back to life so I could kill you. And this time he's red Pison. And actually, before we fight Pison, God, I'm trying to remember. You get the wind rune around this time. I'm just trying to remember exactly where you get it. Let me think. Maybe you got it. No, you don't get it from the dog, do you? Maybe you do. All right, sorry. No, I remembered. So I was thinking real hard, because it's like, it's so innocuous how you get it. It just is like in a treasure chest in the cave on the way to Melanin before you fight Red Pison. So then you get the Wind Rune. So what's the Wind Rune do? The Wind Rune is awesome because it's like a free teleportation spell. So you can get these items called Wind Balls, which do the same thing. I never use them. Because you get the Wind Rune so fast. And so it just lets you teleport around, which is pretty nice. So you can take advantage of like cheaper inns, or if like certain items in the item shops that don't show up. Anyway, after kicking the shit out of Red Pison with yourself and your new best friend forever, we go to Melanum. And in Melanum, Brutus says he gives us like the handshake and thanks, buddy. You really helped out. I'm going to stay here and research all this bullshit. And you're like, awesome. And then we head through a little bit more of a cave, and when we pop out, we are at. Oh maybe we fight Red Pisone after Millennium. Anyway, at some point in this game, God damn, I'm so dumb. We end up on a tiny little island with like just a couple areas to check out. The north of the cave is Igus. I think that's how you pronounce it. Igus is the town with the remnants of it's like the descendants of the people of Millennium before it sunk into the ocean. They're all super nice. There's not much to do here. There's just like some items and stuff to buy. And they kind of point the way. They're like, oh, hey, yeah, there's the cave over there that goes to Millennium, and then there's like another cave over in that direction that takes you back to like the continent as well, but to a different part. And you're like, cool. That's where we're going to go. So you head through the cave. And when you get out of the cave, we pop up. Back on the main western continent, and in there we head south and we enter the town of Pell. So Pell is it's like a mercantile town of some repute. It's got like a Vienna vibe in as much as like this game can represent that. It's like a lot of not canals per se, but it's all like floating on water, or I guess the better term is it's like there's water and it's built on top of the water. And again, we rack up some more abilities and stuff. And this is where we run into our first friend that I like to kill and grind on, the first brain. As I mentioned, there's like a brain enemy later on, and that gives you like 1,700 experience points. But this brain is equally easy. And at this point in the game, it gives you like 500 experience points, I think. Which, like I said, the other enemies around here are giving you like 200 to 300. So it's like almost double. And they're super easy to kill. And sometimes they come in packs. And at this point in the game, you can really like grind out on these things. Like they're pretty simple. So that's fun. We also learned about a city nearby that needs water, and they have a rune. They're and this part of the game is really good. There's like a story, right? So you're in this town, and the first half of this game really is like this. All the side quests are very good and interesting, like bringing the medicine to the kid, like getting the map. This is another good example. You're in this town of Pell. And you're just kind of meandering about, and you meet this lady. You can meet this guy in the bar, and he's just singing, and he's kind of drunk. And you're like, oh, that's fun. That's a fun guy. And then you meet his wife in one of the houses, and she's complaining that he used to be like this person known as like so-and-so the digger, and that he was one of the greatest diggers of all time, but that he hasn't had work, so he just kind of got lazy, and he's just been like singing at the bar, which she does not approve of at all. And there's a lot of little kind of like funny stories in this game like that, where you meet like a couple characters in a town or a couple different towns, and they'll have like some sort of relation. Some of this kind of dries up later on, but at this point in the game, it's still, I would say it carries over, but right now it's very interesting. And the most interesting part is like this guy ends up being like essential to completing like the main story quest. And how that happens is that you hear about this other town where like the elder, this town of Grants or Gunts, I think it's Gunts, that the elder has the water rune, and you're like, oh, water rune, I need that. And so you kind of head on over there, and then the place is completely like dry. Like you see riverbeds or water beds, and they're all completely empty. And the people are like, oh, we need water, or you gotta whatever, talk to the elder. And so when you finally track down the elder in here, he's like, I'll give you the water rune, but you have to demonstrate to me, or you have to help us get water somehow, like cause the rain, because we haven't had rain, and it's been a big problem. And then you talk to one of the people in Gunts, and he makes some comment about how like the rain wasn't that important in the past because we had like wells. And you're like, oh, there's a digger in that last town. So you head back to that town, talk to the digger, and he's like, what, you need my help digging? I love digging. Take me along. And so he hops in, and you can just like wind rune back at this point. The wind rune is excellent again. And when you get there, he just like, you walk up to the elder and you're like, hey, I got this guy's going to dig you a well. And the guy goes, dig, 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 dig. And then they get water. And the elder's like, oh, thank you so much. Here, take this water rune. You've earned it, big guy. And the water rune's cool because it heals you. It heals you for a bit. Not a lot. I wish it healed you for like just a tiny bit more. It'd be more useful. But it's nice to have like free heals, like only during combat. But it's still pretty nice. And then the digger guy's like, after he finishes, digger Quosay or whatever, he's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to stay here and hang out to see if they need more help. And you're like, that sounds cool, bro. Whatever. But if you head back to see his wife, she is livid. She's so mad. He's like, where is my layabout husband? I'm so angry. Fuck that guy. And then I was sitting there playing this, and then I was thinking about it. I was talking about it with my wife like the next day, and I was like, this story is great. Because it's like you have this nagging, angry wife, and this dude's like just wants to chill, and so he goes to the tavern and drinks because he wants to get away from his home, and then he doesn't have work because he just doesn't have work, so he's like, oh, whatever, fuck this bitch, and then you finally like, hey, you want some work, and he's like, yeah, so he goes and he gets work, and he's in a different town, and he's like, you know what, I'm gonna stay here. And you go again, it's like you talk to the wife, and it's like this is like excellent like storytelling that's like totally optional to like be engaged with at all, but that's part of. So there's several of these kind of like little spots that are just like, oh, this is excellent, excellent storytelling. I love it. Next up, the people have guns, and the whole game's kind of like this, as you can tell. Like you get to one town, and they're like, maybe you should go check out that town to the west, to the east, to the northwest, northeast. There's one part where it's a little more open-ended, and we're getting to that part. But this part, and then kind of like after the like central, like the Act 2, essentially. The Act 2 is kind of the most open-ended, how you can handle things, and it's like the character you chose and having your party like matters and stuff like that. But then after that, it gets very like linear once again, where it's like, oh, you're looking for this, you got to go to that town. That town's over there, and you go to that town, you go to that town. And the only thing that like deters you from moving forward is like, well, I got to grind a little bit. So the people at Guns point you to the town of, I think it's Patrof, something like that, where you need to find the star rune. And this gets us to the point where I was kind of hinting at before, where you have like somebody that's not necessarily a rival, I would say, because it doesn't come up to this point, but to get the star rune, you got to fight one of the other heroes, quote unquote heroes. And when you get to Patrof, you learn this like very unfortunate story. So one of the other heroes came to town, wanted to get the star rune from the king. Instead of like negotiating or anything, he killed the king and like took over. And it's just like an asshole to everybody. Like cleared out the castle and just kind of rules with like an iron fist and locked it down so no one can get around. So how do you get around? There is a cemetery on the side of the city, and if you search all of the tombstones, one of the tombstones opens up and leads to a cave, and the cave will take you into the dungeon in the castle. And then that's how you gotta take care of it. So we go through there. We meet a new spider enemy, and this is where we really get some poison. I don't think I ever got poisoned before these guys, but sometimes enemies will poison you. Poison's not a big deal. You just have like antidotes, cost like 100 gold pieces, and then Asuna can cast like a antidote recovery. So it's like a very minuscule effect, and it doesn't get applied that often. And I think I got poisoned like maybe 6 times in like the whole playthrough of this game. So like. Whatever. But just so if you're playing without somebody, just make sure you have some antids. We also get our second level of Mimic, which is red instead of green. And at this point, the Mimics, I just curb stomp. They're not much trouble. Once we get through the cave, we enter the castle. The castle, much like the dog castle, has enemies as you're walking around. But then when you kill your homie, the other hero, the enemies go away and the door in the front unlocks and stuff. So this is kind of tricky because at this point, as I mentioned before, this is the first time you have to fight another hero. And the heroes, when they're enemies, were not nerfed, but you were nerfed. Like the main characters are nerfed. So even in this like Advantage, the Redux game or whatever, I'm the version I'm playing that where they went in and like boosted up the main characters a little bit. It can still be pretty tricky. And then the biggest trick of all is that these dudes have like unlimited healing. So when you get them to like a certain part of their life, they will heal, and they will heal more than you can do damage at like a reasonable level to be like I'm curb stopping all enemies. I'm like having no problems, nothing's touching me, and they get to this guy, and I'm doing like 1/3 the damage I'm doing against everything else. And then they heal for like double my most powerful attack, even with like a crit. And it's like, this is stupid. And so this is where the trick comes in. Like you really, to play this game without like save states and stuff, like you really gotta like kill your other guy, roll into this battle, and then resurrect him using your revive or using like I think you have to use revive if I remember correctly. I don't think you can use like M water, which like resurrects people. But after a few tries and some save state fun, I'm able to kill this motherfucker. And that gets us the star rune, and the people are super grateful at this point. So at this point, the game gets kind of interesting. So we get to Bone, and Bone's an interesting place. It is probably the worst designed city in the game, hands down. It's very confusing. There's lots of like up and down, and there's like little bridges that you have to go under, and there's areas that you can like go behind buildings that look like you can't go behind them. It's Bone. But in Bone, we meet a child that will do various things depending on your character. This is one of the, I think this is really the first time like your character matters outside of who will join them and who you're going to fight against. So with this area, if you have Asuna or Lux as your main character, maybe even if they're just in your party, the boy will say, hey, can you take him to my uncle back in Zealous? Hold on. Let me think for a second. Kid will take you back. I don't remember. Oh, Bonro. That's what it is. I just looked it up on my phone. So, Bone and Bonro. Fair enough. So you go back to Bonro. His uncle's there. His uncle will let you just like get on a ship, and the ship will take you to Dowin, or whatever it's called, Downin, which is the northern part of the Western continent, which is where the game kind of opens up and becomes sort of like open worldy to some extent. Like this portion of the game, this kind of like second act, is very open. So everything up to this point has been kind of like a straight shot. Like you go to this town, they tell you to go fight the dog. You go to the Earth cave. You get the Wind Rune. You fight Pyson. You fight Pyson again. You help Gunts. You fight your homie, get the Star Rune, and then you head up to Bone. And once you're at Bone, if you're anybody else, then you get a key from the boy that opens up a cave, like the cave, I don't know what it's called, Cave Milto, I think, if I remember correctly, something like that. And you go through like a little cave, and then at the end of the cave, you open up a door, and inside the door is a guy with a submarine, and the submarine takes you up to Dowin. So it's like a little bit different. Actually, I don't know if it even takes you to Dowin. That I'm not sure, because I'm pretty sure if they take you somewhere else. Because I remember when I played with Wilmy, I'm pretty sure there was a different town in Camille. I have this pulled up right now. Let me look. Cave Milto. Off you lift to Dowin. Okay, so if we don't take the lift to Dowin, the Bonro vessel, Pandem. Yeah, I was right. Okay. So it's two different parts of the North Continent. The Dowin is like on one side, and Pandam. Yep, Pandam's on a different part. So depending on which way you take this, because again, this next part it's all open. There's like 6 towns, and there's a couple caves, and there's like a evil castle, and there's like a dragon on an island, and there's all sorts of areas you can go to. But at this point, it's like a big circle. Like there's mountains in the middle, and then there's all these places you can go, and you can kind of go to them in like almost any order. Some of the side quests to get the runes, I guess the main quests to get the runes, are dependent upon you doing other things, or they change depending on if you've done things already and like out of order essentially. So this is a really excellent part of this game and how it was set up, in that it's like open world. Before that was like a concept in like Japanese role-playing games, right? Because yeah, granted, in Final Fantasy like 1 or Dragon Quest 1, you can kind of like do what you want, but you still had to like gather things in like a certain order. I mean, you could go anywhere, but by the time we're getting the Super Nintendo era, I mean, we got like Final Fantasies 4 and 5. I think this came out before 5, but in the Dragon Quest like 4 and 5 and 6 and all that around this time frame, and they're very like, you go here, then you go here, then you go here, and yes, in certain situations you can go like wherever you want, but it's almost like, because now you have an airship, or now you have a boat, and so you can kind of meander about and do stuff, but to just be like, do whatever you want, that's like going back to the Nintendo era, like for real. Because like Dragon Quest 2, if you look at it, Dragon Quest 1 to a lesser extent, you can kind of just do stuff in whatever order. Like, you gotta kill the dragon princess before you get to, like, that side of the world. But the dragon princess. You gotta kill the dragon and rescue the princess. But with this game thus far, it's been very linear. And now it's like, kind of do whatever. And if you do things in a different order, it, like, makes a big difference. While in, like, an older game, like Dragon Quest 2, you're trying to find the orbs, and you can kind of find them in any order you want. But it doesn't change anything, really. You just find them in a different order. Eventually you find them all, and then you complete whatever you're doing. So this is very good, right? Because at some point I felt kind of like, I feel like I never felt like stuck, or I never felt like I'm missing something per se. But it was something where it's like, I don't remember this at all, because I played with a different character, and I had a totally different experience with that character. So it's like, there is some replayability in that. Not that like you're missing anything too grave. There's a guy, I think he has, not the light, the moon? I guess, that guy, that's this guy. I think he has the moon rune. You should already have the star. And depending on what you do first, in what order you do things, he will send you on like a different side quest. And the side quest I got, for him, with the SNES crew, I was like, what am I? It made no sense to me. Like, this I legitimately had to look up what to do. Because when you find him, he's like you go to like where he's at, because everyone's like, oh, this dude has the moon rune. He's in charge of this like army nation. And so you go there, and they're like, oh, he just left to go to this other castle to help them with like whatever their problem is. And it's like, all right, here we go. So you head over there and you find him there, and he's like, yeah, I got the moon rune, but I'm not going to sell it to you to help me. And you're like, okay, what do you need help with? And he's like, I need you to go find my like adjutant. He went looking for like some ruins. And I'm like, cool. And then you talk to other people in the town, that castle town, and they're like, oh yeah, there's this ruined city on this island over there. There's a dragon over there supposedly, and that's where the sky rune is. And I'm like, okay, so he's over there. Because thus far, the game has been very concise with its language. Like, this is there, go there. Oh, hey, there's something going on over there. Oh, hey, this place in the northwest, something. But now I'm going into, because this is more open, and it's not just this, right? But the game's kind of trained me. But what I didn't, like, connect at this point was, like, it's pretty open. So, like, I'll be in a town, and they'll be like, oh, you can go to, like, whatever. It's in the northeast. And then you talk to someone else, and they're like, oh, my brother lives to the northwest at this other place. And someone's like, oh, I hear there's, like, children being stolen just straight north. And someone else is like, oh, yeah, there's another thing, like, over here to the east. And you're like, I don't know where to go. But you can go to any of those, in any order, right? The bad guys are, like, a tiny bit harder on, like, the northern end of the map. But really, pretty much the same bad guys all around. I read something, and I didn't really notice, but it's probably true, where like the guys on like the north end of the map, I think were like fire. They cast more fire magic, and then on the south side of the map, it's more ice magic. Probably. But you essentially get all the other runes in this area. So this area, you get the sky rune, the moon rune, the light rune. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so that's it. And then the 7th rune comes later. Okay. So the order I did things in. So I landed in, what was it called again? Pandam. And then I headed to the northwest. This is also the part of the game where you can find a bunch of like these accessories, because your accessories have not changed this entire game thus far, that like make you like almost immune to fire, almost immune to ice, immune to like status changes. But you don't just find them in treasure chests, you find them by searching random squares in random places with no indication that anything's going to be there. So I definitely used a guide for this. And I would too, because fuck this game. So you don't need to look up anything else. Just look up, what website did I use? strategywiki.org or whatever. That's what I used. And just go to like secrets or cheats section, and it'll just show you pictures and say, this in this town, here's a picture where it's at, so you can get these things. Because there's zero. The second time I beat this game, third time I played it, past this point, and I never knew these things even existed. Randomly, I was looking up something else, like the Moon Rune quest. And I was like, fuck you, game. Like, what in the world? So the third option, I mentioned this a little bit before, Oliver or Olvan, or whatever it's called, his name is. He gets a key to like Grime Tower, and he can take the Grime Tower down and then up. And instead of just having a short cave that takes him to a submarine, he has like this whole separate dungeon where you can get a whole bunch of treasure and goodies. And you can go to like the second half of that. You can go to like both halves, but there's a door in the middle that you cannot access unless you have the key. And the only one who can get the key is Oliver, the dwarf. And so that kind of gives you like another way to go if you want. I think the dwarf can also take the submarine. Don't quote me on that. And then in one of the caves, you get like the best shield, if I remember correctly, or like not the best shield in the entire game, but like a super good shield. And then he ends up on like the north side of the map, which is good for him. So yeah, the path I took, I landed in Pandam, and then we headed north. So I played this like out of order from what this is saying. Let me look here, so I remember the names of these places. Okay, that's right. So from Pandam we head north, and we find the castle. We find Tifana, and Tifana is where we first hear about all the children that are having issues. As in they've been kidnapped, including the princess of this castle. And everyone's really sad-epotamus about it. And then you also hear about this other town north, Palasu, who they've also lost their children. And so you're like, I'm going to go rescue the princess and all these kids. And then the king, everyone's like, oh, if you rescue the princess, then the king says you can marry the princess. And I'm like, cool, that sounds awesome. Let's do that. It didn't happen. We head up to the Castle Borin or something like that, or Baron, and inside we fight some monsters, kick it around, and then we run into like Snake Lady monster, and she's got all sorts of ice attacks, but she wasn't that hard. She's like, oh, my children, and then so you kill her, and then you rescue the children, and the children are like, oh, that was fun, I was having such a good time. And so like she's a monster for like stealing children from the birds. I'm like, I don't know how she's gonna feed these kids, but you know, she like took care of them, and so I mean, not the worst monster of all time, I guess. So taking care of that, we go back and check on everybody. The king gives us 5,000 gold, which at this point in the game is absolutely garbage. I can't even imagine doing this as like the second half of what you're doing in this game. But there it is. You get the Cloak of Ice in here, which is nice if you want to use it for this boss. But then I spent a lot of time just kind of meandering about trying to figure out what to do next. Found a bunch of towns, talked to people. They kept mentioning going back to places they've already been, because this is clearly like the main... The majority of characters are going to come at this part of the game, like the left side of the north part of the West continent, or the west side, yeah. Second, because again, only 2 characters will start on this side. The rest start on the other side. But I eventually found my way over to the other castles. So I found Doween, which there wasn't much there for me at that point because it already like surpassed it in every way possible. And then we discover that there's some political intrigue going on this side. There's the Kingdom of Tulane, which is where our homie, the military guy, is at. And they mine, and then they sell their goods to let me look this up real quick. They sell their goods to Biltham. Yep, Biltham. They sell them to Biltham, and Biltham makes weapons, and that's what they're known for. They're known for being weaponsmiths. But the ore's running out, and so Tulane has had to... Tulane has had to lower or raise their prices for the ore, and then Belane has gotten upset about it, and so then they're at war. You don't see any of this war. You don't see any of the battles. Again, the guy from the military town, Pang, I think, comes over to support Tulane. And then you hear some rumors about the king of Beline at this point being like kind of an a-hole and like starting stuff for no reason, and people like confused why he's acting the way he's acting, but you know, I don't get whatever. But again, we hear about the Sky Rune being to this island to the east, and we find a convenient cave. So we head through that cave, and that leads us to the ruined town, which I thought was the ruins that I was supposed to go to, which is like an old what is it, Telugian town. And there's a dragon there, just like we were promised. We killed the dragon pretty easily. And then the Sky Rune's gone. And the game hilariously says, someone has stolen the Sky Rune. And in my head, I was like, I mean, I was here to steal the Sky Rune, so I guess someone else has stolen the Sky Rune, which upsets me. And then I was like trying to figure out what to do. I was like, all right, so it's probably around here somewhere. I also thought it may have been the guy, like the adjutant guy. What I had forgotten from my previous playthroughs is that it's just when you're the people that you hate now, the people you spent 5 years training with who are now all assholes, except Luke's my homie, and that you pretty much just have to randomly go to different towns and wait for him to just like pop up. But the nice thing is that in your little compass sphere in the top left, if there's a rune in an area, it'll like blink with red lights. So it makes it a little easier to kind of figure out where this person's at. So then you just take the wind rune and you just hit every town on the list until you see it. And you go in there, and then you fuck that guy up, either by save scumming like I usually did, or by resurrecting your buddy and kicking the shit out of him. Which I think I actually did that this time, because I was like, I just want to be done with this. I don't want to spend half an hour trying to save scumming this stupid shit so that I can beat this motherfucker. So once you get the Sky Rune. Let me think. The Sky Rune, I think a Sky Rune. So the Moon Rune gives you defense. The Water Rune. The Star Rune gives you. The Moon Rune gives you attack. The Star Rune gives you defense. And the Sky Rune, I think, gives you magic. That or it restores some magic. And then the last one, the Light Rune. I think the Light Rune gives you more magical powers, and the Sky Rune just restores magic, if I remember correctly. All right, so now we got 5. Oh, no. Okay. Then, so I finally looked up a guide at this point, because I couldn't figure out where this adjutant was. There's like a cave that leads to the island with a dragon on it, and I went through it like 2 or 3 times, and I was like, where the fuck's this guy? And he's not in the town, and I was like walking around the island, and I was like, I gotta figure out where this dude's at. And so I look it up, and let me regale you with another change, another part of this like sweet open worldness. So Prosa is his name, and if you meet him, he has a problem, and if you solve his problem, you get the rune. Let's see, is this what it says? Okay, yeah. So if his daughter is rescued, which is, I rescued her. Prosa moves east to Tulane. Oh, so he can be at the original place. Interesting. To Tulane to command the army in the war against Belaine. If the dispute between Tulane and Belaine is solved in the east, which involves you killing the king of Belaine, who's been possessed by like evil or whatever, he goes to Palusau in the west, probably to rescue his daughter. And then if neither of these problems is solved, he's just chilling in Padel, which is like the town with all the people in it. All right. So then, what in the world? All right. I thought there was another thing here that explained like the quest you had to go on, Castle Entrance. Anyway, so eventually I don't realize, I look in this guide somewhere, and it's literally like, hey, where's this dude at? And he's like, oh, he's in Zealous, waiting to get into like Melman, right? Because that's the ruins. And I was like, oh my gosh, game. like, yes, that is a fact. So I guess bad on me, But at the same time, I'm like, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. Like, yeah, it's a ruins. That was like hours ago that like we went and solved that problem. And there's ruins like everywhere. So you got to be a little more specific. So I go there and talk to him and he's like, oh, sorry, bro. He's looking for me. I'll head back. And then you head back and the guy's like, oh, you found my homie. Thanks, buddy. Here's the rune. Thanks for everything. You're the best. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So finally it's time to take care of Bill Thane and his whole business. So we head out to him. He's kind of there. His castle's in the middle, but you get to it from Padal. So fly back there, and then you kind of head up into the mountains, and then kind of like to the east, and you can find his castle out there. He's pretty tough, and there's a trick to beating him. So when we get there, everyone's like, "Oh, praise be to what's this dude's name?" Praise be to Doris. Praise be to Doris. He's the best. And it's like definitely some sketchy stuff going on. And then, so no one in the town will sell you anything. No one will heal you. No one will like do anything to help you out. And we have to kind of sneak our way into the castle. And once we sneak our way into the castle, I first just like kind of worked, and like, again, I'm like so over leveled and I'm playing like a slightly easier version of this game that I just kind of stomped my way through the castle, got to the boss. Thank goodness I had save state. Fought him, and I could do no damage to him. And I fought him for a while because I'm like ridiculously, I could just heal and stuff. I'm like, I'm missing something. So then I reload my save, and I go back through the castle. And at some point, you can go like down into the basement, and there's like a dungeon, and there's a guy in a dungeon, and then there's a guard standing there, and he's like, I lost the key. And I was like, all right, I gotta find this key. So then I meandered through the castle some more until I could open like every chest, and there's like fire walls that pop that are invisible until you try to run into them, and it's annoying. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, this is driving me nuts. And the solution is, get ready for it. There's a table right next to the guard that if you push, which you've never had to push anything ever in this entire game, the table moves and the key is underneath. And then you can open up, you can open up the jail cell and get the prisoner out. And the prisoner is so thankful. He gives you, what does he give you? He gives you something. What does it say? Let's see here. He gives you an item that you have to use. Luckily, no enemies. The star. He gives you the star. And then it's just a star. You use the star, and so when you fight Doris without the star, or when you first start fighting him, he makes 2 clones, and that's why you do no damage to him. So when you use the star, it gets rid of the clones, and then he's extremely easy, especially if you have the fire cloak, because he uses a lot of fire magic. So Asuna with her fire cloak was just, this guy did like nothing. He could not even pretend to like muster up a fight against me, and I just pretty much completely destroyed him. I think I healed Lux once. But that's it. And so we freed the land, and so now we can purchase things, and now we can use the inn and all this good stuff, and everyone's super happy. Also, at some point we find the town of, I think it's Brush. Or Bush, some dumb name like that. And in Brush is our homie, the professor that we helped find the millman, and he's made a great discovery and a great invention since our time together in the ancient Tatugian capital under the sea. And what it is a glider. So he's like, hey, you want to test my glider out and head to the east, because that's probably where you got to go. And around this time too, maybe I think also in Brush or whatever it's called, there's a fortune teller, and she, it's nice that it's like, okay, where was this the whole game? But it's like, you don't really need the whole game. The whole game is just kind of points and points and points. But now it's nice to have in this area, this northern western part of the game, where it's more opened up. Because if you get lost, I went over there a couple times just to be like, all right, which one of these 15 towns do I need to go to next? And she would give you for 100 gold, which is nothing. Like dudes are dropping opals, which sell for 100 gold every battle. So it's literally no cost to use this service. I don't know why it costs anything. But you can use her services, and she'll kind of point you. She'll be like, oh, I feel like you need to go to Padal, or I feel like you need to go to Tifiana, or whatever. And so that was helpful. So we used the mecha glider, and then we crash land on the other continent, on the ice continent. So now we finally have a different. So we have dungeons, and there's castles, and then there's a different color dungeon, but everything's kind of outside. It's kind of dirt, But now we have snow, which is just white dirt. But it is different, and that's fun. The monsters aren't any more like ice related per se. They're just more stronger. They're stronger. We land pretty close to a town, Valenca or something, and we learn that nearby is Satan, and that he's the one who has the 7th rune, and he's the one that we got to destroy. And I don't know if we get much information about him before this point, but the game really starts going deep into this. And in the English version, they call him Gariso for some reason, which is like a more Japanese name than just Satan, but it's literally just like Satan in the Japanese version, like the original. The monsters get a little more intense, but I'm over-leveled and like whatever. I just grind a little bit at this point. And this is the kind of the point in the game where I was like, I feel like I wanted to be a little higher level just for like my sake. And so I headed back to Palusu or whatever, by the military town, because this is where all the brains were that I was talking about that gave me like 2,000 experience, or like 1,750. Well, guys here are barely giving me like, some of them give me less than 1,000. And they're much more difficult to kill, and they have much more like sneaky abilities. So I ground there for a while, then I came back here and just crushed it as I kind of finished up this part. Oh yeah, also around this time we have to go through a cave to get to like so there's like Valenca or Valencia, and then there's like a cave to get to like the next part that's going to take us to like Gorcia or Satan. And right as we're about to leave this cave, you get a message, and you're just like, oh, you bend over and you're in so much pain and you don't know what all this physical pain is, and oh, it feels terrible. And then all of a sudden, now you and your partner can't use magic because you've been cursed. So now that we're cursed, we have to head to the next town, and the next town, Burgask or whatever. We find out that there's a healing lady, a lady who's very excels at the art of healing in the area. And the boy who tells us about this is literally next to the door that leads to her home. Good stuff. So we head inside and talk to her, and she's like, oh, I can't heal this. It seems like you're cursed. I can't heal curses. But you know what? The shaman of the next town, Guanta, I think is the name of the town, he can heal curses. He knows all about those fucking curses. So we head out to that. And at this point in the game, I'm pretty overpowered. So the lack of my ability to use magic, specifically for Asuna, is not the end of the world. Lux is kind of carrying the team here, and I'm honestly trying to like kind of avoid fights for the most part, but at this point they're really not that difficult, to be completely honest. So and she's doing damage, right? It's not like she's doing 1 point of damage or no damage or whatever. But we get there and we go talk to the shaman, and we find out that he's the one who fucking cursed us in the first place because he felt like an evil presence or some bullshit. Man, fuck that guy. So we also learn in this town that there's to defeat Satan. I can't remember what he's called in the English version. To defeat Satan, we need to get Moonlight, because Moonlight will allow us to see him, or to like deactivate his strength or break his barrier or whatever it is. And so the Moonlight is supposedly in the cave to the west of the town, but that everyone who's gone over there has died, and that it's really concerning because a lot of warriors have gone over there and they've all died. So all right, no magic. With my magic-centered character, let's fucking go. Let's fucking go. So I make sure we have all the items I need, right? All the bottles of fire and ice and agility and all that bullshit. So, we still, actually, we don't need all the... I didn't need that. I did have bottles of ice and fire, but we still have the runes. So the runes still work. So mostly I have Asuna using runes to like heal or to give Lux more power, and then Lux is just pounding things. Because we have to meander over to the cave, which really isn't that far away. The Cave of Silence, I think is what it's called. Something like that. So once we get inside, the monsters are a little easier. So thank you, Enix, or Padacio, or who actually ever made the game. Enix is just the one who published it. But this ends up not being too hard of a dungeon. We just kind of meander about for a little bit, and then we get like this really like haunting thing, like right near the end. It's like we see a gravestone just in the middle of the hallway, and you're like, oh, what's this? And you hit it, and it's like, da 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 da! This is the gravestone of Asuna. And I was like, damn, girl, it never comes up again. But it was a little like, oh goodness, what's this all about? And I think it has everything to do with my best friend forever, Pisan, who is back again for a third time. So Satan has clearly has a liking to this twice failure character. And the interesting thing is, I don't understand the motivation of Satan at this point, to be completely honest. Because shortly we find out that the whole thing is like a ruse, us going in the runes and bringing them over here. But it seems like Satan is putting a lot of obstacles in our way to like, or the dark world or whatever, which my understanding is he rules over, because there's all these obstacles like resurrecting Pisan twice first, and he's not any harder with no magic. This guy is a fucking nerd. I just walk into the locker room, kick him in the balls, shove him in the locker, close the door, and he dies of starvation eventually. Like, he's weak ass. I think the first time you fight him, he's decently difficult, but the second 2 times, man, fuck this guy. You just roll him, no problem whatsoever. This time he's metal Pisan because he's gray. First time he was blue, I want to say, then red, and now he's grayish. Okay. So once we get past so the whole Satan thing, man, this really kind of confuses me. All these obstacles in our way at this point in the game, and then we shortly come to find out that Satan has been like maneuvering all this stuff in the background to get all the runes, to bring them to him. So like, why the fuck are you resurrecting this guy and putting him in our way? So that you can just take the runes from us later? Like, go fuck yourself, Satan. You're an idiot. And you're... Anyway. Fuck that guy. What an asshole. But we kill Pisan, rest in peace, we never see him again. And we grab the moonlight, and then we head back to the shaman, and he's like, now I have seen the goodness in your heart, because you were able to achieve moonlight, I will remove the curse. And you're like, thanks, fucker. Fuck you. By the way, at this point in the game, I went and ground out some more levels. I was close. I was like level 47, and I was like, hey, if I go back a few levels, I could probably kick the shit out of everything, because I have like all these maximum weapons and levels that I've gotten. And then I can, and each level at this point is really not that much higher. It's like 10,000 every level. It goes up a little bit, but really not that much. So I just go and I grind up to like level 50, just to like, I like being overpowered in these kind of games. It's like the part of the fantasy aspect, like the escapism of the whole situation, and being like, I am so fucking strong. This is great. This is your last chance, by the way, because we're about to enter the final dungeon, to go and kick the shit out of any of your ex-compatriots if you want. I have no interest in it. One, the game is broken the wrong way to make it like an unfun challenge. Imagine just going into like Dark Souls and the bosses just have twice as much health and twice as much damage, and no matter how much you level your character, if you're maxed level, imagine that in Dark Souls, and just cut everything in half at that level, and then all the enemies remain the same. Like, yeah, you could probably still do it, but it's like, what a fucking grind. Like you're fighting these guys for like an hour to kill them, because you do absolutely no damage, and it's not enjoyable. And if like you mess up once, it's like you're dead. Fuck you. And it's like, oh, fuck this game. So why would I go hunt these guys down? It's completely unenjoyable for like the minimal amount of experience that I can just get from grinding easy enemies. So fuck them. All right, so after we level up, we head to the Cave of Baron, which leads us to the castle of Satan, or whatever his fucking name is in this. So the cave has our second dragon enemy, and he is not any harder than the last dragon enemy. He did seem to have some immunity to ice magic, which is unfortunate, because that is what Asuna does. But whatever, he wasn't really that hard. I equipped the ice cloak, and so it just became like a punch-out session between him and Lux for the most part, with Asuna just healing or using runes to get everybody up. And the runes really make everything like pretty straightforward, to be completely honest, because you enter battle. There's no rune that gives you agility, which gives you speed, and speed is like the most important stat. It's like how much you evade, how well you hit things, and how fast you go in the order turn. So Asuna is a really good character, not because of her magic, but because her speed increases by like 3 to 5 points every level. And most things increase by 3 to 5 points, or actually 1 to 5, depending on like if it's a main stat or not a main stat. So the fact that her speed's so high and that she has like healing spells makes her just like pretty good. The other mage, my understanding is it's similar. His speed is also high, and he also has a bunch of healing spells, and like the best healing spell, Elixir, which I don't know anything about. It's just every time I read about this game, people are like, Valsu is the best character. Valsu or Lux are the best characters, because Lux is the best like punch character with the best defense and the best attack, and then Valsu is the best mage, followed very, 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 very closely by Asuna, and then very, 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 very far away by Legus, who's not very good at all. So I guess if you're doing a challenge run, you want to do like Legus and Ulvan, I guess, because he's also the weakest fighter. Mostly because you have to spend all that money on armor and whatnot. But I don't play like that. That's not my bag. So, it's not what I fucking did. All right, moving on. So after we kill the dragon, get through the cave, we get into Satan's castle. Satan's castle's pretty fucking straightforward. You get to Satan, we use the moonlight, and we beat his ass. But this is where I mentioned before, it all is revealed. So Satan is actually Lemmy, or Lemmer. He's in the Japanese version. That's what I'm going to use, because all the rest of the games use that. So Remmer, he's King Remmer. So he's 5 years ago, before like we were all gathered together to find the runes. Satan went and killed Remmer, took his place, got us all together, trained us up to go find the runes, because the runes. So 1,000 years ago, I don't know if that's the exact amount of time, but we're just going to go with that. So 1,000 years ago, God and Satan had a big battle. God won, shattered Satan's powers into 7 runes, and then sent him. Oh no! And then Satan escaped like forward in time before he could be like utterly destroyed. But the runes just kind of like existed with God, and then eventually, like over time, I guess God got bored or took a nap, because he doesn't come up at all in the first part of the game. And yes, first part of the game. We are only roughly halfway through the game. It's not exactly half, but it's a whole Final Fantasy VI, light world, dark world kind of situation. So, but time travel, or Final Fantasy 1 even, right? This comes up a lot in these Japanese role playing games where it's like, oh, now we're doing a totally different thing, and we're going back in time, which is interesting, and I like it, because I become extremely heavily dependent upon the runes. And they are taken away, because Satan takes them, and he's like, adios, bitches, I'm going to go kill God now. And then he like jumps back in time, and it's like, fuck. But at the last second, in my head canon, because it doesn't say this, when Satan jumps back in time with all the runes that he now has, we like grab onto like his coattails, and we get dragged back into time as well. And then we wake up like 2 weeks later, I think. It's like a week or two, depending on who you talk to. I think one person says like, oh, you've been asleep for 2 weeks, and another person's like, wow, you've been asleep for a week. And I'm like, week. Maybe it's 10 days. It's like, both people are just being like, oh, it's been like a week, like 2 weeks, whatever. But our runes are gone, and our map doesn't work anymore. So we're in a brand new world that does not comport to like the future at all. We're in like towns that haven't existed in the past. There is some towns that come up, but this is the world, right? And we go back at this point to extreme linearity, and we don't have a wind rune, and the wind balls don't really work, so we're not going back and forth, right? So it's like a whole new game. It's like starting back at the beginning. Thank goodness I'm so overpowered that it didn't make that big of a difference. And then we just need to rely more, instead of having the runes as like an easy out, we just got to rely more on items. So the game doesn't like fuck you over completely, but if you've just been like me, completely relying on the runes for everything, you got to make a little bit of a shopping trip. And if you didn't load up before you got to this part of the game, which I did not, it's a hard lesson. Good thing I have so much. I thought I had unlimited money, but at some point I did run out. And I had to grind for money for the first time in this entire game, because the stuff gets so fucking expensive. And I think I died once and lost like half my like working cash. So that put like a frowny face on my experience. But here we are. We are back in the past. Dun dun dun. So now we're in the past, in the Dark Ages, or they call it the Darkness in the English translation. Cool, it's Dark Ages, whatever. I mean, the Darkness. And everyone's talking about the battle between God and Satan, or Giorsu and Sora, I think it's Sora. And how that's going. And everyone talks about how God defeated Satan, but then Satan showed back up. And now you depending on what town you're in, I think it's the third town, Laguna. There's you start off in like Pharos, I think, and then Pasadena, which I easily remember, which is the town of artists. And there's all sorts of people random NPCs you can just talk to about how they're working on their art, how they failed at their art, how they're successful. There's a little girl who's like, I hate piano or something. You're like, I've never seen a piano in this game. Fair enough. So that's fun. So this goes back to some of my earlier musings about this game. Is like the game is very well written, not well translated per se, but very well written. And it's like, even in this like end stage when it's very linear and very quick, I felt like once I hit the Dark Ages, it was like I just like cruised to the end. So this, even though it's like kind of like quote unquote like a halfway point, it's like maybe like 20, like there's 80% of the game is like done, like the playtime, because this part is really just like the monsters give like exorbitant amounts of experience points for their difficulty at this point. I think I was at like level 60, and I didn't even really grind by the time I got out of here. And then there's a point when we visit Millennium or Minimum, which is where all the Tetugians were created. That because I have Lux, I can get him upgraded, so he gets even more powerful, which is great. Because he's starting to lag behind a little bit, to be completely honest. He's not keeping up with as soon as magic, and as soon as got like almost 300 MP and like my base level spell, which, you know, there's like Ice 1 and Ice 2, and Ice 1 does like maybe 80% of the damage that Ice 2 has. So Ice 2 is better, but Ice 2 costs like 3 times as much. So the only time to use Ice 2 is really in bosses. Because otherwise it's just like a waste of MP. Like when I'm just like killing dudes, I'm gonna get cast this thing like 100 times. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, there's not a dungeon in the world that's gonna need me to cast this spell 100 freaking times. It's so great. So I like how you can just cast magic forever. That's good. That's what I want. It's like it's like when they made cantrips in Dungeons and Dragons in like 4th edition or whatever. It was like, good. Mages can just like cast spells whenever the fuck they want. Excellent. This is how it should have always been. Because it's like, oh, I'm a magic user. You get three magic casts today, and you're going to play 5 battles. And you're like, well, go fuck myself. I guess I'm getting a sling and doing 1d4 damage from the back rows. I'm so glad I chose Wizard as a class. Wah, wah. Now, to continue my tangent, magic users in 5th edition are extremely overpowered compared to the martial classes, which is why you should play Pathfinder. If no other reason, Pathfinder's got a lot more shit going on, and it's like an extension. Pathfinder 2nd edition is essentially Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition number 4. Because there's 3rd edition, 3.5 edition, Pathfinder 1st edition, and the Pathfinder 2nd edition. So it is the best mechanically game of the popular games. I'm sure there's some others that I've never played or heard of that are like even better. There's all sorts of like indie role-playing games that I hear are very good. I don't even have time to play like one of the normal, one of the mainstream ones. But anyway, that all aside, this first little area, if you need to grind it out, is extremely easy. There's like this dragon monster and then this like funny like goo monster, ghost looking thing. Both of them die. Like I think the goo monster dies to like Ice 1 in 1 hit. And the thing gives you like, if I remember correctly, well, if you're watching this video and you see differently, then that's what it is. But it was like 2,000 to 3,000 experience points. Like, I think it was 3. It's so much for like being so fucking weak. And the dragons aren't much stronger at this point. And then by the time you get to the very end, right before you fight Satan, you're not getting much more experience, to be completely honest. Like maybe something gives you 3,000, maybe. Like there was a point, and again, you cannot teleport anymore. Like the wind balls don't work, and you don't have the wind rune. So if you want to get back to this area, you got to hoof it all the fucking way back. And at some point, you are not allowed to hoof it back anymore because something happens we'll get into in a little bit. So it's like, now is the time to grind because it is so easy, and the experience points you get from guys later on is not any better. So this is really the time to just like, what level do you want to beat this game at? 60? Just grind out 60. It's not going to take you that long, maybe 20 minutes. And then you can just like punch things in the mouth like that. The last boss, I think I was on level 60, and I just curb stomped that guy. There was like no challenge at that point. So if you want a challenge, you can do it differently, but that's what I did. So this is a good place. So you start off in Pontiff, you just hear about God and how the devil's back, or Satan. He's not the devil, I guess, according to like this mythology. And you go to Pasadena. Pasadena is a cute little town. It's like a fun little place to like hang out for like 5 seconds. You start hearing rumors and stuff about how Satan 1 has beaten God here, and there's like some discussion and disagreement at this point. And then you head to, I'm pretty sure it's Laguna, like Liguna. And from when you get there, there's just like more items and shit you can buy. And then we learn a little bit. We learn that some of the overarching narrative that is starting to become clear, that like God and Satan, this is where we learn that like God and Satan fought each other, and then God won and took, just, and put the powers of Satan in the runes, and then Satan like escaped to the future, and then the runes were just like around. So even though the runes were destroyed and reintegrated into Gorcia in the future, they exist here in the past. So that's good news. So we can track down these runes and use them to defeat Gorcia. Excellent. That's what I want to hear. Or Satan, as you were. We also learned that this guy spent like $70,000, which really isn't that much, in this game, on an airship. And so we got to go track this guy down and use the airship to get to Millennium. And so this is another spot where the choice of characters actually matters, which I really appreciate. If you're Asuna, the only girl, the pretty elf girl, you roll in there and talk to this guy, and he's like, "You're a babe, you want to ride on my airship for free?" And I'm like, "Yes, sir, I do." And he's like, "High fives, here's my airship. All right, see you later. No sexual harassment or assault. I'm a good guy. I just like pretty elf babes." And I'm like, "Thank you, anime. You're the best." Meanwhile, if you're one of the other guys, anybody but the demon and the, like, what is it, Legus and Wilmy, then you can pay 7,000 gold pieces to take a ride on his airship. So that's nice of him. If you're one of the like bastard races, I guess, the demon or like Legus or Wilmy, the alien, he will just straight up be like, "Go fuck yourself." Now, that doesn't mean you can't ride on the airship. What it means is that you have to discover where the secret is. And the secret is behind one of the bookcases in his mansion. So good luck figuring that out. You just have to... I mean, this is the game where you literally search in random spots to find random items. So I guess like if you've gotten this far, maybe you're like, all right, well, I'll just start meandering about searching everything like I do anyway, and eventually I'll stumble behind one of these bookcases in his mansion. And once I do, I'll be like, ta-da, I am in the airship. And once you find the airship, you can just take it. Like, there's no questions asked after that point. So Millennium is like the super advanced nation, and there's tons of Tetujins around, and we meet some like colorful characters. One guy is trying to create new Tetujins, and he's got a whole bunch of like fucking retards in there. And then you can buy new weapons for Lux for the first time. You can buy him a better punchy fist and a better armor. And it's significantly better. It's like 10, I think it's 10 more strength and like 20 more defense, which is good. I mean, he's getting more stat upgrades this whole game, so it like evens out, I feel. But it's nice that it's like this area you get a boost, and then if you're using Lux, or if you kill off your main character, which is what I did, and roll back in with Lux as like quote unquote your main character, then the guy who's like making all the retard Tetujins will like, "You want an upgrade?" And you're like, "Sure." And then you get like a super powerful, like you get like my guy went from like, I don't even know, like 260 hit points to like 320 or something. It was like, I was like, damn. Like it was you should definitely do this thing, or you're really missing out on some power. So then, we resurrect Asuna, and we just talk to people, and a lot of people are coming from this other town to work here because of like, this is like where it's at, Palsu, I think. And so if we head up there, oh, and also we learn here that they're trying to build a weapon to kill Satan because God failed. And we try to go down to the lab to like check it out, and they're like, no access for you. And it's like, oh shucks. So it's called FOMO or something, right? Fear of being left out. Or fear of missing out. I think it's Formu or Formo, something like that. Anyway, it's important because we end up fighting it later and causing the downfall of this entire continent. But yep, that was us. We did it. We sank the island. But to get down to the lab, we have to figure out a way to do it. So we head off to Palsu, because there's a lot of people talking about Palsu and how they like their families there. And there's one scientist in like the area that's like, "Man, I miss my mom. Maybe I should just move back." And so you head to Palsu, and it's all like old people and kids, because like all the adults are working at Millennium. And once we get over there, after talking to all the kids and learning about all this stuff, and again, it's just like good world building. It's just like talking to NPCs, and we just learn so much about the world and how interactions are going on and what people are doing. It's great. At that point, we bump into an old lady, and she's like, "Oh, hey, my son's been working there. He's been pretty sad. Can you take him this letter?" And you're like, "Yeah, for sure, old lady." And so we take the letter, and we head back to find that scientist who was like talking about going home, and he's like, "Wow, thanks. This really helped out my morale, and I'm so glad my mom's doing well, and I'm going to keep working. Hey, man, you want to go check out this Formo thing that we're going to use to kill Satan?" And you're like, "Yeah, bro, for shizzle." And he's like, "All right." So then he leads you down into the lab, and you can talk to everybody, and there's like... The doctor who's in charge of this whole program is called Dr. Failure? Or Fail? Dr. Fail? What the fuck? It's an appropriate name, as he fails. Because we go and we check it out, and they show us Formo or whatever, and it's like, oh shit. This is what we're going to use to kill God, or this is what we're going to use to kill Satan. Sucks, bro. And we're like, okay, cool, sounds good. And then as soon as you leave and like do anything, like leave the town and come back, or like talk to somebody and wander inside a building, the whole thing shakes like an earthquake, and there's an alarm that goes off, and the music changes. It goes from like a nice town vibe to like, and you're like, oh shit. So then we run back down to the lab, and everyone's freaking out and trying to get out of there real quick, and they're like, oh no, Forma, like, it's breaking, and we're going to be in so much fucking trouble. Oh no. And so you go in there and you fight that guy, and I don't remember him being hard at all. It's another one of these things where I am clearly like over leveled and over prepped for like this game at this point. Like all the difficulty is like wasted away by the hillside. It's like water runoff. So I buff up my guys, and I just kick the shit out of it. It barely does any damage at all at this point, which is great. And then we automatically hop on the airship with all the rest of the survivors on the entire continent, I guess, and fly to the like the icy, like the winter continent from the future, Barluca or something, because Forma like used way too much energy, and that destroyed the island or something. So that's great. But then the airship crashes, maybe. But the airship now becomes like a mini town where we can buy stuff and use an inn and heal our wounds if we need to at like the shrine. And the armor is pretty good. It's got some pretty good items, but at this point I think I had all the best everything I could possibly have. We learned that there's God's camp is like nearby this area, and that there, you know, so if we want to go try to help defeat Satan, we got to go to God's camp. And then people are like, oh, if God camps here, he's still alive. That's great. That's so good. And we also learned that everybody survived. Don't worry, everybody. No one died. Just a bunch of the robots, because fuck them. Fuck those guys. So we head to God's camp, and they're like, oh, shit, man. To the cave to the east, which I'm pretty sure is the same cave where we got cursed in, like, the modern era or the future. But God went over there because he needed to get... why did he go over there? He's just over there. And so we head over there, and the bad guys here get pretty tough. And again, don't give really that much. But there's two of the last four bosses are in here. There's like the same skin as the dog we fought at the very beginning of the game. He's pretty easy. I think he's yeah, he wasn't difficult at all. And then the second one is the same as like the lady who stole the children, the snake lady, but also different color. So neither of those bosses were tough at this. Yeah, so neither of them were difficult at all. But at the back end of this, we find God. And what's God doing? He's hanging out, just dying, just chilling. I didn't put two and two together, but now that I'm using on the game that I played, I think this is supposed to be like a prison. I don't remember anyone saying anything about that. They talked about how God went to go fight the devil, or to fight Satan, and then that didn't go too well. And they talk about the runes that they created, that they created when God like sent him to the future, but now he came back for like round 2. So I'm going to talk about this more at the end, just kind of like over the whole thing, because the time travel is always kind of confusing. But this game it is like one of the best examples of well done time travel, because everything makes sense within the world consistently, and like nothing. It's like time travel doesn't jack anything up or change the future or anything. It's just like it exists because of everything that existed that proceeded forth in the way that it should have proceeded based on what occurred. And I'll explain that more. But so God passes, but he's like, don't worry about me, I'm God, fuck it, I'll be okay. I'm gonna exist in the ether. Hey, make sure you go back and get those runes though. That's the only way you're gonna be able to defeat Satan. And with the power of the runes, you'll be able to take care of him and beat his ass. And I'm like, cool, sounds good. And then he like fades away. We wanted back out of the cave, back to the camp of God, and now there's a bunch of elders just like sitting around in a room, and they give us they give me the runes, and they explain what the runes do. The runes no longer help me because remember they're the power of the devil. But now that the devil came back after the runes were created, and now he's got his powers back, they were like, all right, we need to adjust fire on this. So God and these guys, or mostly God, it seems, went ahead and changed the function of the runes to, instead of giving me Satan's powers to like create defense and do all this cool stuff, it now destroys Satan's power. And each rune is explained at this point in like a short paragraph, or like 3 sentences or 3 lines or whatever, what they do. So for example, one of them cuts his life in half. One of them cuts his defense in half. One of them cuts his strength in half. One of them cuts his magic in half. Agility in half. Yada yada yada. So it goes through all his stats and cuts everything in half. And then one of them, I think the wizard rune, if I remember correctly, makes invisible. So you got to use that one first, and then you can kind of like use whatever ones you want. I think you're supposed to use them in like opposite order. I don't think I did that exactly, like in the opposite order you get them in the first world. But you definitely want to use the wizard rune first, because that makes it so you can actually use the rest of the runes when you get to them. And then they're like, good luck, brother. And they send you on your fucking way. And so at this point, we got a couple more bosses left. We got a cave to get through. The labyrinth before the castle. And in there we fight like a dragon boss thingy, if I remember correctly. Like another one. And then, oh, you know what? I actually don't think we fight any bosses in this cave. I think we just get through the cave, get to the castle, go through the castle, and there's Satan. The castle's an asshole because it's like a repeating maze. And so even save scumming that I did, save, go up the stairs, down the stairs, when you enter certain rooms, so the castle there's like 4 corner rooms and then 4 center rooms. The center rooms sometimes have shit in them, like robots that are dying that give you hints about what floor you're on, or treasure. And then the outside rooms either go up or down the stairs. And even saving, like every time I did anything and like double checking things, I still got lost at one point. So like, fuck this, man. And the bad guys aren't that hard here. But it's just annoying. You're trying to get through this thing and get to the last boss and finish the game. That on top of, it's like you're cruising, you're going upstairs, because you got to get to like the 4th or 5th floor. You go upstairs, and then you enter a room, and it's like downstairs. So even if you like backtrack out of that room, it doesn't matter. Like once you enter a room, one of these corner rooms with downstairs, you go the fuck downstairs. But even with saving, there was like a point where it's like, I got to a level, and it was like, there's no upstairs. Like the fuck? So I had to go like back down the stairs to like find the right upstairs. To then it was like, what is going on? Like this maze is so crazy. But eventually we get to Satan, and then we get to him. We use all our runes and we pummel the shit out of him. And then as he dies, he's like, guess what? Fuck you. You're dead too. I'm destroying your body. As his last attack. And he's like, no, fuck you, Satan. Fuck you again. You dragged me back here, made me kill you a second time, and then you destroyed my body. You can fucking rot in hell. But just you. Your homie, like Lux, is just going to like exist forever. And then whatever, 1,000 years, 5,000, 25,000 years later, he's going to just like wake up and be like, oh, I'm alive. I don't remember how I got here, what's been going on, but I guess I'm here. I just forgot all that shit that happened. Because the time loop makes sense. It does. I swear to you. But there's God, and God's still around doing God stuff. So even though we destroyed Satan finally, he destroyed us. God's like, he grabs your soul and is like, I'm going to resurrect you so you can play Brainlord and Mythic Arc, at least one, because I couldn't find Mythic Arc 2, which apparently is some crazy puzzle game or something. And I'm gonna put your soul in the original King Reamer, the guy that got killed by Satan, right? So then eventually you get killed by Satan to like set off this whole chain of events for yourself in your world. What seems very confusing, but trust me, it makes sense. And I'm going to explain to you why it makes sense now. All right, so that's the game, right? And then this leads into Brainlord, which then leads into Mythic Arc. which I've already started playing Brainlord, and I'll get to Mythic Arc afterwards. But let's kind of do a rundown of the time loop history situation. So in the grand scheme of things, God and Satan existed. God destroys. What doesn't destroy? God fights the Satan and then sends him to the future, weakened, right? So in the future, he kills King Remor, and then takes his place, gets all the crew, the 7 crew, sends them to find the runes, because the runes are his abilities that were sapped from him during the second occurrence. Right? So this is like the kind of like, oh, time travel, my headache, but it makes sense. So because it's a loop. It's kind of a loop, but no one's like trapped in this loop. There's like a logical progression of this loop. So looking at it from Satan's point of view, and strategywiki.org has a really good breakdown of this that kind of helped me understand a little bit better. So if you go to their site and look up the 7th Saga guide, you can see it written down, and it's very precise. So Satan gets sent to the future, and in the future he learns by getting the wizard rune, I'm assuming, that his power, that these runes consist parts of his power. Like he doesn't quite maybe understand why, but they do. And so he kills King Remor, takes his place, gathers the apprentices or whatever, the 7 heroes, sends them to find the runes. He gets the runes back at the end, and then is like, now I have double the power. So now I'm going to go back in time again. Now that I have this power, I'm going to go back in time and fight God. But like, where do these runes come from? So when you go back in time, you find God, and God talks about how he beat, like, God is more powerful than Satan, but now Satan is like double Satan because he's got double the power. But what they need to do is create, what he did is he created these runes to take the power of Satan away. All right, which takes his power back down to normal levels, which is like half. But then now they contain that double power, right? So after you go and you use the runes to steal the power, half the power of Satan away, he's weakened enough to the state where God defeated him the first time, and this time you destroy him for good. All right, and there's some indication that God, like him and God battled, and so it's not even like a full half. It's like he's weakened at some point during this whole experience. Satan is in his battle with God, and God is like, quote unquote, destroyed. So then when you go to fight him a second time, this time you destroy him for good. But then you still have these runes with this power that just like exist, and they exist for thousands of years. And then when Satan like shows up in like the present, and finds out what the runes, that's where they came from. They came from like him getting the runes in the first place. So this is like the crazy time loop, right? It's like, so how did any of this exist, right? Well, it exists because it always existed. And that's how we get into like the time travel back and forth. It's very good because it's not inconsistent, because these things all exist always, right? Because that's the time logic that this is using. It's not using a time logic where you go back in the past and you change the future. There is no changing the future. Everything exists always because they have always exist. So the runes exist because at some point you went back as the main character and took the power of Satan with these runes, and then the runes got scattered throughout Tichondria, whatever the world's called. Okay. It makes sense from your perspective, because from your perspective, as the main character, you're like you're born and raised in Tichondria, and then King Remor comes and like teaches you and gets you to do the runes. You do the runes. You go fight Satan. You defeat him, but he takes the runes, goes back in time. Then you go back in time. You get dragged back in time as well, and then you go learn about God and Satan. You defeat him, but this time you defeat him for good, and then you're dead, right? But then God snaps your soul at the last minute before Satan can like destroy it for good, and then puts it in the future in King Remor. And then you live the life of King Remor, which is like Brainlord, Mystic Arc, and Mystic Arc 2, something Carnival. And then after all those adventures, you become king and you get old, and then Satan kills you, right? He doesn't destroy you like he would have previously. And so that's your situation. Historically speaking, the world exists, right? There's God and Satan fighting in the Age of Darkness, the Dark Ages. And then God sends Satan to the future, and then Satan comes like back pretty quick, it seems. And and then Satan's defeated, not by God. I mean, people don't know who, I would assume, because the mythology is that God killed Satan, because he did. And then he fought him again. So when you're like thousands of years in the future, you're just like, oh yeah, God fought Satan, and that's into that. So what's this? And then a new evil arrives. No one's calling this thing like Satan anymore. They're just like, oh, there's this dark kind of thing. This presence exists. But like really, it's all they talk about in the game is like there's monsters increasing, things seem a little more dangerous. Besides Pison, no one's really talking about the Satan character. We're just talking about this dark presence. But then dark presence gets taken care of by the main characters, and then the world is at peace again. So the world just kind of keeps going, right? So all this time loop stuff, really, who's like quote unquote caught in the time loop is nobody. Nobody's caught in this time loop because things start and then there's like a loop back and then there's an end, right? So that's why it's so interesting, because from like all the different perspectives of the main antagonist, main protagonist, and then the world itself, there's like a straight line for all this stuff, and all three intersect, but none of them like cause complications, and nothing changes. You don't change the future. You just exist in time as time exists. And the things you did always happened. You just didn't realize they happened until you went there and actually did them, but they always exist. And that's how the runes can exist, and how Satan can take the runes and become extra powerful, even though you go and the runes are created by his taking that power back, essentially. So it's like, how did all this get started, right? because time does not change. That's why. So yeah, there you go. It's just interesting to think about, and I feel like it's handled very well, and I feel like it all makes logical sense. And you could say like, well, how did Satan? The counter argument is like, well, how did the runes exist if Satan didn't exist the first time around? Like, how did he get them the second time? And it's like, because you went back in time, but he didn't go back in time till you got the runes, right? But the thing is, because he did go back in time, the runes existed, even though you had to create them. But because there was a situation where you went back in time, the runes could exist. Time travel. It's so good. Anyway, so Seventh Saga is great. I really enjoyed it. The visuals are very unique. The playing, it's great. I like how there's like minimum amount of changes when you do stuff, but there is changes. There's different, each one of the characters gets kind of like a little bit of their own personality and a little bit of their own quirks, right? The only one I'd say who doesn't really, the knight, as far as I'm tracking in my head from when I played him, his story and Valsu's story are very similar. But like Wilmy gets treated poorly, Legus gets treated poorly and differently. Oliver has like a whole separate dungeon he gets to go through and a whole different reception at his hometown. Lux gets powered up and has a whole separate thing going on. Asuna gets treated differently because she's a woman, in a positive way, right? So depending on your character, and then that doesn't even include like the different magic spells, the different items they can get, the different stat boosts, and kind of focus on combat and stuff. And it's just like, the game's short. I think I maybe spent 10 hours. And that, granted, I like speed it up when I'm like grinding or doing quests or whatever. So maybe like a 20-hour game if you just play it originally. I can't remember how it's been so long. But 20 hours for like a role-playing game, it's pretty good. It's not bad. And you can play with a different character and get like a very different experience, especially in the open world part where it's like, what is going on? And then you have different like antagonists and different guys you got to fight, and you can have a different companion. You can virtually have like a totally different, not a totally different, but you can have a varied experience depending on playing this thing, like with different characters and different side characters, and the paths you have to take and stuff like that. And it's not like it's a choice-based thing. It's really just like the choice of character beginning has some meaning, which I really appreciate for a game that's like 30 years old or more. So yeah, it's really good. Really enjoyed it, and highly recommend it. Cool. Catch y'all later.